All right, hold on. This is Kate Blauck, Dr. Kate Blauck. She's going to talk to us about being a freelance writer. You want to give us that first lesson again for the camera?
First lesson, don't do stuff for free. Dr. Garcia was just talking about how people apparently close caption stuff for free on YouTube as a volunteer thing. Don't do that. Like maybe Wikipedia doesn't make money off of people's contributions, but YouTube does. So like, don't do free things for YouTube. They should pay you.
Agreed.
What else am I supposed to talk about?
Getting paid is important. All right, let me do a couple of housekeeping things real quick once. Here we go. Today is Wednesday, 4/8. It's raining outside. There's our circle time announcement for the day. You're here in the Zoom meeting. I'm so happy to see your faces. And if you're not here in the Zoom meeting, this video will be up for you as soon as it gets processed after the meeting's done. Sign up for an individual conference if you haven't already, or if you want another one. So if you had one, but now you have additional questions. I do try to open my Zoom meeting on Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 2, but I walk in and out of the office while I'm doing that. So if you miss me, you can be sure of my attention if you sign up for a conference. And I've added some slots this week to the spreadsheet, and it's linked here if you need it. For this weekend, read How to Become a Writer. Dr. Cashin sent that along. He's having his students do a write-like with it. So it's very short, it's like 6 pages. He's having his students write about like how to become a creative writer at UWL. And he'd like to share his students' work with you guys in case you have time to look at it, provide feedback. You're also welcome to write a write-like if you want to. It's not an assignment, but it is an option. And I think he actually is not going to be able to come in and talk to us. He's going to give us students' work. And then Dr. Staub is maybe going to come in next Wednesday and talk for a few minutes about like what it means to be a creative writing minor, what those classes would be like, what he does as a writer. I'm still waiting to hear back, but he had volunteered to do it. So I think he'll probably drop in for a little bit in case you have questions about the minor. So yeah, read How to Become a Writer, post a response to Padlet. Feel free to write your own write-like if you want to, and I'll send them on to Dr. Cashin's students. They can respond to us. And if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. If we were all meeting together in person, like we'd trade papers and chat through it and stuff. And I don't want to make more uploading work for anybody than we already have. Check in with your annotated bib group. That list of who those people are is here. So if you're still wondering, check in with your annotated bib group and start putting your sources. That's your sort of weekend project, is to start locating your sources through Google Scholar or Murphy Library and then writing your annotations. If you liked last week's podcast that Dr. Blauck recommended for us, then you might be interested in this episode of On Point that was last week. Rebecca Solnit talks about what disasters reveal about hope and humanity. And it's not Krista Tippett. I thought that it was, but it's still got the same kind of like soothing, maybe we can get through this, think about life in as positively as we can in times of great crisis while also acknowledging the crisis. And of course, if you liked Krista Tippett, there are tons of important people who have been on her show On Being. So you could just put in On Being and people you're interested in and see if they've stepped on to talk about their lives. Any questions about the week or the work ahead that you have personally or that you think might benefit your peers? All right, then I'm gonna hand it over to Kate. Since there are so few of us, Kate, do you want people to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they're doing?
I mean, sure. I feel like the appropriate response to that, like,
yeah. I know, I kind of backed you into a corner there. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a leading question.
It was a loaded question, right?
Yeah.
Leading the witness.
I guess your students can introduce themselves.
All right. Go ahead, guys. Take a minute. You want to raise your hand or just start?
You should just call on them.
I can do that. They have a little thing where they can raise their hand on the side, but yes.
I don't think they're going to want to.
All right, you're up, Matt.
Okay. Well, is there any like basic information that I need to clarify? Besides
Tell,
just the thumbnail?
tell her your name and your major, and I don't know. Do you have any questions or interests in freelance or creative writing?
Okay, so hi, my name's Matt Ellsworth. I'm a writing and rhetoric major, and when it comes to like creative writing and freelance writing, it's something that I'm not very good at. I just haven't had a lot of practice. So I guess one question I would have is just what's a good way to practice?
Do you want me to like answer these as we go? How do you want to do this?
We'll just let all four of them say who they are and what their major is, and if they have a question for you, and then you can talk about whatever you wanted. All right,
Cool.
you're up, Adam.
Okay, cool. I'm Adam. Hi. This is my second semester here at UWL. I transferred from UW Superior. I was a creative writing major there, but the creative writing major isn't offered at UWL, so I'm doing the writing and rhetoric, same as Matt. I really enjoy writing. I do a lot of writing, been writing for a while. I did freelance writing for about a month, but between working 2 jobs and doing school, I never had time to line up actually getting anything done. So I met with a lot of people and got hired a bunch and then fell through a lot.
All right, Kieran.
Hi, I'm Kieran. I'm a sophomore. I'm a English Lit major, also a Spanish major. I don't know, the concept of like freelance writing and creative writing is really like attractive to a lot of people. And it does sound like, oh, like such a like a good perfect job, but like with what Adam was saying, like how do you properly structure your time or have like a timetable for like this is going to take this long, this project might take a little bit longer, and like really hashing it out.
Awesome. Michaela?
All right. Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm also a culture major and a minor in creative writing and a certificate in professional and technical writing. I am currently eating pizza right now, so my screen will be going in and out of black, just to let you guys know. I don't really have any questions. I mean, freelance writing has always seemed attractive to me. I am one of those people that Kieran was talking about for it being attractive to. But I guess more it's just I really like writing chapter books, and I guess that's what I'm focusing on right now. So
Awesome. All right, Kate, it's all yours.
Great. I mean, is there a structure to this? Like,
Nope.
what do they know about me? Do I tell them things about me? Like, what?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you. I usually tell them some things, and I didn't do it this time. Sorry,
Oh,
everybody.
okay, cool. So, hey y'all, my name is Kate, formerly Dr. Blauk. I mean, technically I'm still Dr. Blauk, but I don't teach college anymore, so nobody calls me that. So the short version of my trajectory was I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. That's where I grew up, and so I stayed there for college. I bounced between majors a bunch. Didn't know what to do, really just liked books, so I got an English Lit degree, and then I didn't want to teach high school, so I went to grad school. That's kind of what happened. Got into a PhD program, did my master's degree in dramatic literature, and then went to grad school at the University of Texas in Austin. And once you get your master's degree, they have you teach their first year writing class, which is a rhetoric class, which I had never taken a rhetoric class, so that was fun. And then I discovered I actually enjoyed teaching that a lot, and that rhetoric made a lot more sense to me than English Lit did. And so I switched fields and I got my PhD in rhetoric. From there, I did the thing that you do when you get a PhD, which is you go on the academic job market, and then you go wherever you get a job. So I ended up in I ended up teaching at a college in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I was living in Greenville, South Carolina, which is slightly more of a place than Spartanburg is. And I spent 3 years teaching there. The job was great. South Carolina was not. And I decided ultimately that it was more important to me to have more agency about where I lived than it was what I was doing. And so primarily, I feel like I should back up a little bit. Between college and grad school, I took a year to apply to grad schools. I got a job writing, like my English degree, I got a job. Awesome. Writing product descriptions for a website for Zappos.com, an online retailer. Turns out, like, if you can write good sentences and proofread things, there are jobs out there. So I had some experience with that kind of like professional technical writing. And then when I was in grad school, through a friend, I got recommended to review theater for the newspaper in town. And so I did that for 5 years while I was in grad school. And then when I was looking to transition out of academia, again, it was an acquaintance needed somebody to write something. I was like, hey, I can do that. And then I did that well enough that he was like, oh, I will recommend you to other people. And I started picking up freelance jobs. And then it turns out if you have 3 degrees in writing, people think that you can write things and they will pay you to do it. So that has worked out pretty well. I now live in Portland, Oregon, which is where most of my extended family is. I've been here since last August. It's great. Welcome to a small experience of what my life is like. I already worked from home, so this hasn't been too terrible, except for I do like to go places when I want to, and that has been terrible. But in general, one of the questions that came up was like, how do you manage your time? And part of what I found attractive about academia in the first place was how much agency it gave me over my schedule. I had to show up for classes, but like otherwise I could do stuff when I felt like it. And if I wanted to go run errands at 2 p.m. on a weekday, I could do that. And grad school certainly is kind of a crash course in learning how to schedule your time better, because you're kind of thrown into the deep end of being out on your own and like just expected to like read a book between now and Monday. But I think that, so to give you a slightly more practical answer to that question, if you are deadline oriented and able to kind of work backwards from those, it works well for me. Like usually I try to pick, like unlike when I was in college, which I would wake up at 5 a.m. and write the paper the day it was due. Now I typically try to complete things like the day before they're due. But like I'm generally a deadline oriented person. If people give me kind of open-ended, like get that to me sometime, like it doesn't happen. And so that's one of the reasons that this has worked for me. Another thing that I have found super helpful in thinking about just a career transition in general was realizing that I don't, like as a person, I don't like getting paid to be in a specific place. Like I really value freedom and independence. And so both having control over my own schedule and then having to control my own schedule has worked well for me, because it's kind of really worth the trade-off of like, I get to live in pajamas if I feel like it. But figuring out like, if you are capable of like this is actually probably a good test drive of like, how are you doing in the midst of this total lack of structure? If you're doing okay, then it might be okay. If you're not doing okay, then you might need more structure in your life and like might want a job where you actually have to show up at a time to a place. Yeah, I forgot the other question. I'm sorry, Matt. So many things happened. What was it? Does anybody remember?
Oh, it was just like, what's the best way to practice creative writing?
Oh, to do it.
Well, that.
Yeah. So, if well, okay, so thank you. That reminds me. So like there's this like distinction. So I don't get paid money to write in a manner that any of us would consider creatively. I write blog posts about boring business things that nobody really reads, but that Google reads. And so then what happens is like those websites get increased traffic because of search engine optimization. I write that, and I do a bunch of educational curriculum content. So the writing that earns me money is not writing that is sort of like creatively fulfilling in any particular capacity, but I'm super okay with that. Like I find satisfaction in putting sentences together well and articulating ideas clearly. I've never been much of a, like I really enjoy reading stuff about vampires, but I don't write it. If what you want to do is write stuff about vampires or werewolves or science fiction, all of which I thoroughly support, I have found this book to be really helpful. I'm invisible now. There we go. Okay. It's called The Artist's Way. And now would be a good time to do it. It's like a 12-week course, but what she has you do, her big thing, and this is something that I do, is doing something she calls morning pages, which is 3 pages of free writing every morning, like first thing, just to sort of get your creative juices flowing, as it were. I've been really consistent about that since November, and it's been super helpful. But truly, like what there is to do it. And depending on like the flavor of creative writing that you want to practice, you know, if what you want to write, somebody mentioned sort of wanting to write chapter books. Well, like do that online, you know, write some fan fiction. Like I would say write things that are low stakes to get the practice in. But I think very much so the commitment to doing it consistently is really important.
I did morning pages.
And
pretty
response next.
Well, I'm not looking to write the next Twilight or anything, but I'm very much the same as you. I just like putting sentences together and that kind of junk. But it's just something I wanted to get better at.
I would love.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Do you not want to describe khaki pants as being attractive?
Not particularly.
Guys, I would love to write something trashy and profitable. If only, right? There would be like goodbye student loans if I could just like write the trashy and profitable thing.
You could. I feel like any of us could. Those are not well written.
Yeah.
It's got to get picked up. And you have to be willing to compromise your soul by writing something terrible.
I will say I did morning pages faithfully through the dissertation, right? Like I've fallen off, but I don't think I would have. And mostly they were like, I dreamed about this last night. I'm mad about this. Why is this person always terrible to me? Why won't my advisors be better? Whatever. Like it was just like mostly a litany of complaints or confusions. Like I can't understand why I'm not getting this done. But it does kind of like, it's almost like an info dump. Like it gets it off your, like your hand is moving, so you're writing, and your brain is emptying of all these other sort of like distracting things that are constantly. And I did 2 pages. I used a legal pad, and I would just write front and back, and I'm like, I'm done with that for the day, and then would sit down to my dissertation and broken down into more concrete tasks. And I had them read the first 3 chapters of Bird by Bird, which also suggests that like pick a time. Maybe it's 8 a.m. if you're a morning riser. Maybe it's, if you're an early riser, maybe it's, 10 p.m. if you work after everyone goes to bed, or maybe it's like 10 a.m. if you get up and have your coffee. But pick a time every day. You're going to sit down and do your writing at that time. And it's just a way to train your brain to anticipate that that's the thing you're going to do at that time you said you were going to do it.
Yep.
I was going to ask you, a lot of the thing that's been coming up in individual conferences is that students do a thing that I also do, which is that I use places to direct me, to cue me to do different things. So I do all my grading in coffee shops. I do all my lesson planning in my office. I tend not to do those things in my home. And now that we're living in uncertain times, I've lost access to those physical cues to do things. Do you use something like that, or do you have a different cueing system since your work is always kind of part of your place?
That's a good question. I did that when I was in grad school and writing my dissertation. Another piece of my story is that I spent a year in between leaving South Carolina and getting to Oregon, just kind of driving around the country and working remotely. So I lost all of that ability to like orient myself, and so learned to just work wherever I was. I think for me, time is my anchor. I work in the morning and early afternoon, and then by mid-afternoon I'm useless and I don't try to make myself do work. I think like learning what works for you and learning your habits and learning what motivates you are kind of invaluable tools. Like I discovered years ago that I am super duper motivated by like dumb badges and like streaks. And so there's like a lot of different habit tracking apps that work super well for me. Like if I can like check off the thing and be like, I've done this for 372 days in a row, I'm awesome, right? Like that works for me. Those don't work for everybody. But like kind of figuring that out is really helpful. And also reward and figuring out like what reward systems work. Like especially when there's stuff I really don't want to do, which fortunately I've now like narrowed my client base enough that it's not a lot of things. But like sometimes I just don't really care about the blog that I'm supposed to write. And so structuring it so that like once I do this, then I can do the thing I actually want to do, like finish Tiger King. Like I worked real hard on Monday so that I could take yesterday off so that I could finish Tiger King. Like, oh yeah, and just another sort of life tip that I had to learn the hard way. It's really important to take a full day off every week, at least one. Especially in the midst of everything, my productivity dipped, and so then I was only like working a couple hours a day, and then I didn't really notice that I worked for 2 weeks straight, and then I kind of lost my mind. So working, like powering through is not a real thing. I had to really firmly enforce a full day off when I was finishing my dissertation, and that's super important. So like I said, today is, Monday, because today's Wednesday, because time is weird now. Like I had a bunch of tasks to check off, and I was like, cool, like I'm gonna get this done today. It's gonna be a long day and kind of a crappy day, but then I'm gonna knit and watch Tiger King, and it's gonna be great. And it was. So. Other questions?
Yeah, other questions for Kate? That's all I was gonna say.
Adam.
Right. So when you're picking your jobs for doing the writing, and this kind of aims a little bit more towards monetary value than like funness, I guess. But do you think it's better to do a bunch of smaller jobs that eventually add up, or do you tend to tackle a bigger job?
Yeah, it really depends. So when I first started, I was kind of like, I don't know what I want to write. I'll write anything. I'm qualified. It's fine. And I did a lot of that. I mean, I will say, like, really, I encourage you to try not to do anything for free. But especially starting out, like, it's okay to type not very much money if you don't have any experience, right? Because it's better to get experience. Because like once you have some things written that you can point to, people are more inclined to be like, oh, you are competent to write things. And so I think it just depends on how you like to work. I really enjoy organizing stuff and like kind of like systematic small things. So I at one point got a job like writing these like really formulaic descriptors for a particular website, and I really found that satisfying. Like it was, like each of them didn't pay very much, but I liked the sort of structure and formula of it because I didn't have to think about it very hard. But if that's going to be mind-numbingly boring for you, then pick something sort of bigger and more creative. I also found, like, when I was starting out, Google is a wonderful resource. You know, there's plenty of blog posts and websites about like how to be a freelance writer and how much money to charge and all of that. And so my strategy was just to kind of say yes to whatever jobs came along and then Google how to do it after I said I would do it, and like figure it out. And through that process, I started to figure out what I do like and what I don't like, and try to be a little more discerning about what jobs I take, because I have found that the mind-numbingly, but like I got paid a lot of money to rewrite some web pages for a company that did like industrial safety equipment, and it was so boring. And so I quoted them more money than I thought they would be willing to pay me, and then they said yes, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna do this. But it was still like really hard to make myself do it because it was real boring. So fortunately, no more of those have come my way, but I guess that's sort of just another tip of like, you know, if you don't actually want to do it, ask for more money, like the amount of money it would take to motivate you to do it anyway. And if you get it, then the universe is like trying to give you some money. Which also another really important tip, particularly in terms of freelancing specifically, as opposed to like writing for a specific company and having a salary and whatnot. I do think it requires a lot of self-discipline, both in terms of scheduling and then finances. One of the best pieces of advice I got before I launched myself onto this journey was that you have a separate bank account, and like all of the money that you earn goes into that bank account, and then you pay yourself the same amount every month out of that bank account into your personal bank account. So that, because like income will fluctuate sometimes pretty dramatically. And if that doesn't affect your budget, it's a lot easier to not freak out when the months are low. So like the general advice is to get kind of several months saved up, and then if that starts dipping really low, then it's time to start thinking about getting a real job. So yeah. But one of the cool things about it that I didn't realize I was going to like as much as I have is that there's actually in some ways a little bit more security, and like instead of having one job to lose, I have several. And so if I lose one, it's not as panic inducing. And that has actually been kind of cool. Yeah. Any other questions?
I can keep going with questions all day, so I'm just gonna wait till someone else says something.
Nope. All you, buddy.
Okay, cool. Do you prefer to stick with jobs where they're gonna have you, keep doing something where, like, you mentioned blog posts, so maybe you do a blog post every week, or you do like once a month, you write something, or do you kind of like to do the sort of jobs where it's like just one time, help someone out with something and then go? Because when I was looking, a lot of the jobs I had was someone saying, I have to do this for my job, and I'm not really sure how to do it, so sit down with me and help me do it. But then also a lot of people like, hey, here's $20, update my resume. And it's like, what do you prefer to sit down and do something more scheduled, or do you kind of like to just do something and say it's done?
Yeah, I now am only working with clients where I have kind of a consistent ongoing thing from them.
Cool.
From a financial perspective, that works a lot better for me because then I kind of know about how much money I can probably expect to make on a monthly basis, and like, so that's what I prefer. I don't like, sorry, that was me. I don't like as much the sort of like random scattered whatever stuff. But if what you're trying to do is get experience, then that's good stuff to do, just to find out for yourself if you like it or not. Like I don't want to help people with their resumes because like mine's not good. I haven't had to use it. Like here's the other thing I'll say, and this, like, I don't know if this is discouraging or not, but like all of my jobs I have gotten as a freelancer have been from people that I knew, or like people that I knew recommended me for the job. Like I have made zero effort to like go out and find work. And that's just fortunate for me. But I think that is largely, especially in the world of freelance writing, that isn't like, well, even journalism. I mean, I think it's really about who you know, which is just obnoxious, but kind of true. So getting an internship and meeting people is probably a good idea.
I was about to ask, how do you find that first person? And getting an internship is probably, you know,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
most
I don't
institutionally
know.
supported way to do it.
Yeah, like because like I got the job for the newspaper through a friend, basically, because he was leaving and tapped somebody to be his, and then like when I left, I tapped somebody else because I was just like, my editor didn't want to be bothered with reading a whole, like, she didn't want to like put out a like, hey, writers, send me your stuff. Like she was like, nah, like. So I like lucked into that, and then because I had that experience, right, the first freelance gig I got was just from like another friend who has a design firm who also wanted to sort of publish some articles on his website. And I was like, I can write those. He was like, okay, here's slightly less money than he should have paid me to do it. You know, but, you know, that like, that wasn't somebody in the publishing industry or anything. That was somebody in like the design field who then knows people who need writers, kind of thing. So, yeah. Until you're grown-ups and have grown-up friends, internships, I think, are probably the best option.
And probably too, like talking about what you do, which feels a little awkward and weird, especially when you're first starting out doing it. But saying, oh, I'm a person who writes content for websites, and then people know they have your name in their mind when they hear that somebody else needs that.
Cool.
Anything else? Any parting wisdom you want to confer?
Parting wisdom I want to confer.
You've already given us quite a bit.
I know. Yeah. I mean, like, I think my biggest is like, don't do stuff for free. And like learn to say no. That like you don't have to do stuff.
That's so hard. It takes so long to develop that skill in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. Random, but the thing that popped into my head, part of my departure from academia was the realization that I am much more of an introvert than I ever thought. And I found that out by reading a book about introversion called Quiet, which was super helpful. Oh, actually, I'm gonna throw this in the chat. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw some book recs at you. If you're like trying to figure out what to do with your life, this book, Designing Your Life, is really helpful. I cannot emphasize enough just like figuring out how you operate before making decisions about what to do with yourself is really helpful. Like for me, discovering that I was introverted, I was like, oh, that's why teaching exhausts me. Maybe this isn't like just because I'm pretty good at it, like I've learned how to do this and I'm pretty good at it, doesn't mean it's a good fit. And so like learning how you operate and like learning what matters to you, and using those things to sort of orient yourself and making life choices, I think is the best advice I can give. I realized that it was much more important to me to have control over where I lived than what I was doing. And so I kind of restructured things to find more fulfillment in my life outside of what I'm getting paid to do, than sort of making the thing that I'm getting paid to do like the thing that was providing me with self-worth. And that's been really freeing for me. But I also like never felt super called to teaching. Like I did it because I liked books and just like didn't really want to leave college, which isn't a great reason to go to grad school, by the way. Like not wanting to teach high school and just like really enjoying college is not a great reason to spend 13 years in college. Worked for me, but like,
yeah, I think a lot of people are wrestling with that now, right? If it's worth it, if it's even what you need to do in order to do the ultimate thing that you want to do.
Yeah.
And I've thought about adding Designing Your Life to our reading list for this class. The book order was due before I had a chance to even order it after you recommended it last time and look at it. So maybe this summer I'll get to look at it before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good one. Like, and you know, I have a cousin who like was convinced that she wanted to get her PhD in math so that she could teach college. And like the reality of teaching college is you have to go where the job is. You don't get to choose. And for me, that's deeply not worth it. And so we had a lot of conversations about like why do you want to teach? Like, what do you actually want out of teaching college? Like, I realized like I wanted freedom of my schedule. Like that was the big reason that I wanted to teach college, was because like I had so much free, like I could do what I wanted with my time, and I really liked that. And I thought I really liked summers off. I discovered I actually get really depressed with 3 months of nothing to do. So this has worked better for me because now I work remotely and I can go places whenever I feel like it, and just probably still have to do some work. So yeah, just kind of like figuring out what matters, which is really hard to do in your 20s. But nobody actually like sat me down and was like, hey, asked me that before I applied to grad school. So
yeah, I think it's a challenge across the lifespan.
Yeah,
but you're often expected to answer it in your 20s, which seems like incredibly unfair.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Good luck, everybody. Hang in there. I'm gonna bounce out.
Yeah, go ahead and bounce out, and I'll stay on with my folks for just a minute, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
We'll catch up on RuPaul.
Yeah, well, and Tiger King. We have to debrief that.
Yeah, we do need to debrief. There's much to discuss there.
Yeah, now that I've finished it. Okay, bye.
Bye, Kate.